It's Thursday, it's the 3rd of July. You're watching Arirang, Korea's only global network. Live from Seoul, I'm Conn-young. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in Seoul about 4 hours ago for a 2-day state visit here. Now, President Park Geun-hye is scheduled to hold summit talks with him at any minute now, after which the two leaders will release a joint statement alongside a press conference. For details, we have our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun live with us. You-sun.
Conn-young, President Xi Jinping and First Lady Peng Liyuan arrived in Seoul just before lunchtime on this Thursday. The South Korean presidential office has emphasized that President Park and President Xi's special friendship was a key factor behind Xi's state visit to Seoul. Now, it's the first time that a Chinese leader, after taking office, has come to South Korea before visiting Beijing's a longtime ally, North Korea, as well as Japan. Presidents Park and Xi, who first met in 2005, have made strong impressions on each other, and since taking office last year, they have met 4 times. The two presidents will meet for a summit later this afternoon, after which they'll hold a joint press conference. Tomorrow, Friday that is, here in Seoul, President Xi will meet the National Assembly Speaker, the Prime Minister, and also address hundreds of students at Seoul National University. Presidents Park and Xi will also appeal to businessmen from both countries at an investors forum. And the Chinese First Lady is scheduled to take part in a series of cultural events during her visit here. Conn-young?
Now, You-sun, what key issues are we expecting to top the agenda for the talks between the two leaders?
Conn-young, President Xi's decision to first visit Seoul before Pyongyang will certainly increase pressure on the North Korean regime to give up its nuclear arms and to return to negotiations for its denuclearization. Now, the question is exactly how the two leaders will display their positions in a joint statement following their summit today. Also topping the agenda for the talks will be Tokyo's retreat from an historical apology to Seoul and its attempts to expand its military role in the region. Beijing, which has been locked in a bitter territorial dispute with Tokyo, is expected to seek greater cooperation with Seoul on historical issues, but it's unlikely Presidents Park and Xi will specifically target Japan. The amicable relations between Seoul and Beijing and their mutual mistrust for Tokyo is not a welcoming dynamic for Washington, which is looking to expand its presence in Asia. On the economic front, the leaders of Korea and China will agree to speed up their FTA negotiations and set up a trade market for their respective currencies. This has been Choi You-sun reporting on Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to Seoul, and I'll be back with more updates on our next newscast.
All right, President Xi offered his thoughts on the upcoming summit in a piece that appeared in Korea's major daily newspapers on this Thursday. The written contribution, which encourages greater cooperation between Seoul and Beijing and expresses high hopes for this summit, echoes the sentiments voiced by President Park a day earlier during her interview with Chinese broadcaster CCTV. Here's our Liyuan with this report.
Chinese President Xi Jinping begins his piece with a traditional Korean saying, "It only costs 3 straw bags to buy a house, but 1,000 to get a good neighbor," emphasizing the importance of having good neighbors. He goes on to say that Seoul and Beijing have been able to build a healthy relationship based on trust, adding the two should always be able to freely exchange opinions on areas of mutual interest. President Xi also calls economic cooperation the main focal point of Korea-China relations and says China is aiming to expand its economic ties with Seoul through speedy negotiations on their bilateral FTA. As for his visit to Seoul, he writes that he hopes the two leaders will share a friendship, discuss cooperation, and preserve peace. His words were echoed a day earlier by Korean President Park Geun-hye during an interview with China's CCTV, where she expressed hope that the visit will bring relations between the two to a new high.
이번에 시 주석님의 방한도 더욱 내실화 있는 결실을 많이 거둬서 두 나라 관계의 신뢰와 또 우호 관계가 더욱 깊어지리라 그렇게 생각합니다.
When asked about Korea's ongoing historical dispute with Japan, President Park simply said Tokyo needs to have a correct understanding of history. She also accused Tokyo of trying to undermine the 1993 Kono Statement, which was its official apology for forcing roughly 200,000 women into sexual slavery during World War II.
국가 간의 신뢰를 저버리는 일이고 또 국제사회의 그 준엄한 그런 그 어떤 목소리를 무시하는 그런 행위라고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 일본은 이제라도 어떻게 역사의 수레바퀴를 되돌릴 수는 도저히 없는 것이기 때문에
Japan's recent attempts to revise history and economic cooperation between China and Korea will top the agenda of the summit between the two leaders. Liyuan, Arirang News.
Well, the media spotlight is not just on President Xi, but also his wife, who is accompanying him on his trip to Seoul. She's almost as well known as her husband, and her fashion style in particular has made headlines around the world. Our Song Ji-sun has more on China's First Lady.
She is the Michelle Obama of the world's second largest economy and has been referred to as the Carla Bruni of China for her past career in entertainment. It's Chinese First Lady Peng Liyuan, who was once more famous than her husband for her regular appearances in an annual CCTV New Year's gala. Unlike her predecessors, the former singer and performer has been outgoing and active in her role as China's First Lady. The world's 57th most powerful woman, according to Forbes magazine, is also a goodwill ambassador for the World Health Organization. Selected to the International Best Dressed by Vanity Fair magazine last year, everything Peng wears makes headlines in fashion magazines and immediately sells out. Peng is scheduled to visit palaces in the Korean capital and attend cultural events during her two-day visit, and will be on her own for most of her itinerary while her husband holds talks. To show around the city, the presidential office of Cheongwade has tapped current senior secretary for political affairs Choi You-sun, who will serve as Peng's personal tour guide during her stay. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Well, the United States is keeping a close eye on the outcome of the Seoul-Beijing summit. Washington says it encourages countries in Northeast Asia to engage in dialogue, but U.S. officials declined to comment on whether they were concerned that South Korea and China were getting too close. At a regular press briefing Wednesday, the State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki said both countries are important key partners to the U.S. and that Washington will wait to hear what the two leaders say at the conclusion of their meeting. Here, take a listen.
Thank you for your patience. We also encourage dialogue between countries in the region, and we've long encouraged the strong and peaceful rise and prosperity of China. So we'll see what comes out of the dialogue tomorrow, and certainly, we'll encourage meetings moving forward.
Well, Japan, on the other hand, has not made any official remarks on the Chinese president's visit to South Korea, but it did have something to say regarding North Korea, that it will relax some of its sanctions on the north as the reclusive state begins to reinvestigate the fate of at least a dozen Japanese nationals who were abducted by Pyongyang in the 1970s and 80s. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe told reporters today that North Korea's special committee is now fully authorized to launch an effective probe into any organization. The sanctions to be lifted reportedly include travel curbs and restrictions and money transfers, and a ban on port calls by North Korean ships. These sanctions are separate from those imposed by Japan and the international community following North Korea's nuclear tests. Now, shifting our focus a little bit, following the April Ferry disaster that left some 300 people dead, the Park Geun-hye administration drew up plans to reorganize the government with a focus on safety issues. Well, her plans are now facing opposition, but which side will prevail? Here's our Kim Young-gil.
President Park Geun-hye has vowed to disband the Korea Coast Guard over its poor handling of rescue operations as the Seoul ferry sank. In its place, the president wants to create a new government body charged with safety and rescue affairs under the office of the prime minister, which would serve as the control tower in future disaster situations. Under the plan, the Coast Guard and the National Emergency Management Agency will be absorbed into a new government agency on national safety. But the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has already registered its objections to the plan. Instead, it has proposed keeping the Coast Guard and the National Emergency Management Agency intact and establishing a full-fledged safety-related ministry. It also suggested the National Security Council under the presidential office become the control tower of all disaster and safety-related issues instead of the Prime Minister's office. Under the NPAD plan, the Coast Guard and the National Emergency Management Agency would still be responsible for safety issues, including rescue work at sea and on land. The party is also calling for a removal of the Coast Guard's authority over investigations and intelligence gathering on land. However, the ruling Saenuri party is unlikely to give in to the NPAD's demands. It says the opposition's opinions will be heard, but that more weight must be given to the government's plan. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Well, this shouldn't come as a big surprise, but it's an interesting indication of the sentiment in Korea following April's ferry disaster. The number of people taking trips by ship tumbled 26% in May from a year earlier. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries says that's a drop from nearly 2 million to 1.5 million passengers. Now, in particular, the number of ferry passengers to Korea's southernmost Jeju Island plunged 47%. The ill-fated Seoul ferry was en route to the resort island when it sank off Korea's southwestern coast. And the ministry attributes the overall drop to public fear of ferry travel after the tragedy, but also to the Seoul host operator Cheongjin Marine Company being suspended from operating the Incheon-Jeju route. Well, back to our Korea-China summit. On the sidelines of their summit in Seoul later this Thursday, or as we speak right now, it is quite ongoing at the nation's top office. Korea and China are expected to ink a deal to allow direct trading of their local currencies. The agreement will slash transaction costs for companies on either side of the West Sea and reduce foreign exchange risks. Our Kim Ji-yeon has a wrap-up.
Korea and China have been trying to settle their exports and imports in their own currencies in light of their growing trade. China is Korea's largest trading partner, while Korea is China's third largest trading partner. Last year, the trade volume between the two countries totaled $230 billion, with Korea posting a $63 billion surplus. Up until now, only 1% of Korean companies settle their trading bills with their Chinese partners directly in the Chinese yuan, because only those already holding enough yuan could do so. Under the currency deal, exporters and importers from the two countries will no longer have to pay transaction fees when converting the won to the yuan, and vice versa, since there's no need to convert into the US dollar. The new arrangement is expected to cut Korean traders' business costs by at least 3 to 5%. It would also help reduce potential exchange rate risk. A researcher at the Korea Capital Market Institute says the deal will make Korea's financial market more attractive to foreign investors as well.
The deal with China is expected to enhance Korea's financial and industrial brand image with the growing use of the yuan in international trade.
The global trade volume settled in the yuan amounted to 4.6 trillion yuan, or $741 billion last year, up 58% from a year earlier. In addition to the currency deal, China is reportedly considering allowing Korean financial institutions to invest directly in China's capital markets by granting them investment quotas of up to $13 billion. China has similar quota deals with Britain, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Well, speaking of currencies, Korea's foreign exchange reserves hit another all-time high in June, the country's 12th straight record-breaking month. The Bank of Korea says that the nation's foreign exchange reserves stood at $366.55 billion as of the end of June. And that figure is up more than $5.6 billion from the previous month. The central bank attributed the jump to issuance of foreign exchange stabilization bonds and the strengthening of the euro. Korea was the 7th largest holder of foreign reserves in the world as of the end of May. However, Korean businessmen's current woes are now down to the local currency that many expect will breach the psychologically important 1,000 won level against the greenback in the latter half of this year. Well, the domestic economy already suffering from sluggish domestic demand is expected to take a major hit from this trend. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Exports are Korea's traditional growth engine, taking up more than half of the nation's gross domestic product. That's one reason why the nation's financial authorities have become increasingly sensitive to the growing strength of the local currency. And it wasn't an exception on Wednesday when the Korean won hit its highest level against the U.S. dollar in nearly 6 years. They're concerned that the strengthening won will erode the profitability of local exporters, especially those of small and medium-sized companies that remain vulnerable to currency fluctuations. Experts say while large companies manage to minimize the negative impact of a strong local currency by diversifying settlement currencies and raising overseas production, local small and medium-sized enterprises don't have the money to do all that. The Korea Federation of SMEs says that more than 90% of 94 surveyed small and medium-sized exporters saw their profitability drop in May due to the strong won. What's worse is that the currency woes come at a time when domestic demand remains sluggish. While Korea's economic recovery remains a gradual, export-led process, experts say a strong local currency that erodes the price competitiveness of local exporters is likely to dent the overall pace of economic recovery. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Well, we've always known that those supermarkets, huge supermarkets, pose a threat to those small markets. But a new study shows that when one big retailer opens, 22 of the mom-and-pop stores have to close. And that is according to a study published by the Bank of Korea, which shows that the opening of one large retailer induces the closure of nearly 20% of the small groceries in the same area in the 5 years after the retailer opens. The authors of the study say this proves a general perception that large retailers encroach upon mom-and-pop shops with quantifiable data. They add that the negative impact that large retailers have had on small shops has been reduced somewhat since 2008, when the government began instituting more active regulations against large retailers. Now, for our business today on this Thursday, let's talk about the Bulgarian economy. In a country struggling with rampant corruption, a weak judiciary and unstable government, the Bulgarian banking system has consistently won praise for its stable institutions, high liquidity, and low risk. But in the past few weeks, that system has come under attack in the worst run on banks in 17 years. Now, our very own Dr. Kim Byung-ju is in Bulgaria, and he joins us live on the phone. Now, Dr. Kim, one latest development about Bulgaria is the recent S&P credit rating downgrade, which was announced in mid-June. So what caused this, and how is its economy in general?
Right. You mentioned the recent banking crisis, and I think it rose with this S&P overall credit downgrade as one of the important backgrounds. The relationship between those two cases would still need to be examined, but those were very much, as you just emphasized, very much important developments recently. Getting back to the S&P downgrade, that happened just June 13th, Friday, last month. And basically, what the S&P recognized was that they had to downgrade the sovereign rating for Bulgaria to be downgraded from triple B, A-2, to minus triple B, A-3. And it's a one grade down. And they said basically in Bulgaria, the overall political situation is unstable, and that has led to impacts on economy. What's been happening is last spring, meaning the spring of last year, a majority-led government actually was driven out, and since then, minority coalition government has been in place, and they has they have recently called for an election this coming fall. So we are in a transition period here in Bulgaria, and they're facing a lot of difficulties, and that's what S&P has recognized. And in the longer run, they're saying not only the political situation, but also the population situation. They face a quite considerable outflow of talents out of this country into other EU countries here, and at the same time, they face a fast-aging population problem. So basically, that's what they were recognizing. And there were other kind of issues, such as a failure in energy policy that has created a lot of difficulties, and S&P said the government still has to, Bulgarian government has to work on, encouraging the growth of domestic demand, and it needs to work on several things at several fronts. But the thing is, the way I see it, though, it's not all that bleak at all. It has great potentials in terms of, IT environment, young people quite well educated and having ambition to succeed and all that. And so the way I see it, their job situation improving. So the economy itself is facing a mixed outlook here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Korea and Bulgaria ties. Now, how are Korea and Bulgaria interacting with one another in terms of economy and business?
Korea is selling a lot of, petrochemical products here, and also together with the IT products that Korea is famous for. And we are selling our cars big time as well. And we are importing mineral products and other tobacco products and some clothing and so on. But Korea's exports to Bulgaria has decreased for the last 2 years, 2012 and 2013. So Korea is quite interestingly, running a small deficit with Bulgaria here.
Now, what about businesses? You're there, so you felt the local public sentiment and whatnot. How are Korean businesses viewed in Bulgaria?
As often it is the case elsewhere, Korean brands are very well received here. They have great interest in Korean cars and electronic goods and so on. And also, what's interesting is here in Bulgaria, the University of Sofia, the capital, they has set up a Korean Studies department, and it has become a full-force department since 1995. Actually, it was set up 1995, and then it has become a full-force department since the year 2010. And there's a great interest in country Korea, the language, culture, and K-pop, Korea Wave, Korean food. So it's another place in the world where I could confirm that interest in Korea is fast growing.
Then can we say that for Korean businesses, there are much opportunities for them that they could seek in Bulgaria?
Indeed, I think Bulgaria is a unique situation here because the opportunities for Korean businesses seem to be quite futuristic. There are several Korean companies that have already, considerably invested in the solar power generation here. Names like Samsung, LS, LG, Hyundai, they all come up here in terms of setting up solar power generation facilities here. And so they have some further ways to go in terms of further strengthening their investment in that direction, in that very futuristic direction. And plus, Bulgaria has great interest and talent pools for IT business. They are very much interested in, e-government, for instance, and then the intelligence systems, network management, and also water treatment, as well as the various kinds of technologies that could enhance energy efficiency. So indeed, this is one country where Korean businesses that has a futuristic outlook should pay close attention to.
Well, Bulgaria, another market that Korean businesses could tap into, and perhaps, and as for the cultural and political front as well, and diplomatic, Korea and Bulgaria could foster their relations in the near future. All right, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, thank you so much for connecting with us all the way from Bulgaria, and we will see you back in the studio next week. That was our Kim Byung-ju.
Thank you very much.
Live on the phone from Sofia.
Good afternoon. After yesterday's showers, today we can expect monsoon rain to fall nationwide throughout the day. And right now, the rain is coming pretty fast in the southern provinces at a rate of 10 millimeters per hour. And the rainfall is expected to continue until tonight, except in Gangwon province, where the rain will continue to fall until tomorrow for a total of up to 60 millimeters. And we can expect here in the capital of up to 20. Now, today is going to be a humid day, but the rain will bring down our daytime highs but putting back the temperatures into the low to mid-20s. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 26 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will both peak up to 24 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 26, Dokdo peaks to 22, while Gangneung tops out to 23. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Conn-young.
Well, thanks, Michelle, for that. And that is your business today on this Thursday. Thank you for watching. And do join us again for a special programming at 6 p.m. Korea time of the Korea-China Summit Joint News Conference.